Hello and welcome. 9/11 was the most highlighted anniversary this week, overshadowing a couple of other historic dates. Hopes of peace between Israelis and Palestinians were raised considerably 14 years ago today on the US White House lawn. The Oslo Accords laid the foundations for two states, Palestine and Israel, to live side by side in peace. But the years since have proved to be disappointing for both sides as the conflict continues. Broken promises, frustration and a total breakdown of trust have resulted in violence that has claimed the lives of more than 4,000 Palestinians and more than 1,000 Israelis. So how much room is there in all this killing for the philosophy of non-violence? Ironically, it was on September the 11th, 101 years ago, that India's legendary man of peace, Mahatma Gandhi, launched his Satyagraha, or non-violence resistance movement, which eventually achieved independence for India. It was a philosophy that the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. employed in the USA during the civil rights movement of the 1960s. And today we'll discuss how the ideas of non-violence may be promoted in the Middle East. Don't forget, we take your calls on the show and you can reach us at the numbers at the bottom of your screen. Well, joining me from Rochester, New York, is Arun Gandhi, the grandson of India's Mahatma Gandhi. He travels around the world carrying his grandfather's message of peace. In 1991, he founded the MK Gandhi Institute for Nonviolence here in the United States. Mr. Gandhi, good to have you with us, sir.
Thank you very much.
I have to start off by, it's a pleasure to have you join us as well, sir. I have to start off by asking you, when you assess the situation in the Middle East, when you look at the efforts of your foundation and, you know, carrying the sort of history of your grandfather, what real prospects for peace do you see in a situation such as the Middle East, especially the Israeli-Palestinian situation?
I still feel very strongly that if they understand the philosophy of non-violence and apply it effectively, they can get peace there very soon. But if they continue with the violent activities there, then peace is never going to come. It's been 50 years or more than 50 years now that a violent struggle has been going on, and we haven't come to a resolution there. I think the time has come when people should realize that wasting lives like this is not the answer to the problem. The answer is to find an alternative way of dealing with this whole situation.
But when you have a situation, as you say, entrenched for so many decades, about 6 decades, what can be done to change the mindsets, to change the attitudes?
Well, we have to change the whole culture of violence. You know, we think of violence and non-violence only in terms of the physical violence that we see and wars and killings and all that, but we practice a lot of violence in non-physical ways, and we have to be conscious of that. And it's only when we look at that whole picture that we will appreciate the value of non-violence. And that's what Gandhi was trying to tell us, to look at the whole picture, to see the non-physical violence that we are committing and the physical violence that results out of the non-physical violence, and then change our attitudes and our behavior and our relationships with each other.
So how much is the situation in somewhere like the Palestinian territories in Israel complicated by the fact that often it's outside forces, you know, outside intervening forces that complicate the situation for the conflict? In a situation like India, of course, it was an outside force in the form of a colonizing power, but essentially it was a different kind of conflict. Can you apply the same principles when you look at the Middle East?
Yes, I think so. And I met President Arafat just before his death. One of the questions he asked me, what would you do if you were in my place? And I told him, I said, this is an off-the-cuff answer, but I think it would work very well. And that is that there are more than 500,000 refugees in Amman, Jordan. Perhaps now they are more than that too. But all of them look to come back to Palestine so that they can live in peace in their own country there. So I asked him, I said, what would happen if the Palestinian leadership went to Amman, Jordan, and mobilized the men, women, and children there and told them that we are going to march in peace back to our homeland? And no weapons, no police, no army or any protection. They're just peacefully men, women, and children marching, just as Gandhi marched during the Salt March. And if they came back to the West Bank marching 500,000 men, women, and children. I said, could anybody use violence against them and kill them? And would the world watch this happening? I don't think it would. I think it would be a tremendous media event. The whole world media will be focused on that. And this could have been a major victory for the Palestinian people there. And that would have ultimately led to the creation of the two states that everybody has been dreaming about. But this requires leadership that is willing to sacrifice their lives. Today what is happening most of the time is the leadership is asking the people to sacrifice their lives while they are not doing anything to sacrifice their lives.
Right.
And what we need is a leadership that is going to lead from up front and not from behind the scenes.
Well, so we have a call on the line from the United Arab Emirates. Good to hear from the UAE. And Georgios has a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I actually have a comment, which is not accepting the other is the problem is the Middle East. The problem is not violence. The problem is the Middle East are taught from childhood to hate the other.
Okay.
It is not Palestine and Israel is very small.
So it's conditioning. So
that is exactly what I'm saying, the non-physical violence. When we teach people to hate and prejudices and all of these things, this is non-physical violence, and we have to get out of that mindset. We have to teach people positive things: love, compassion, respect, understanding. That is what non-violence is about. It's only the culture of violence that emphasizes hate and prejudice and violence and killing and so on.
Arunji, your grandfather was a remarkable man. I mean, I just want to get from you, as we continue this debate about the Middle East, I want to just get from you, though, some perspective first on how he was able to teach you his particular philosophy, how he was able to illustrate it for you as a youngster, so that it sank in and you were able to understand it.
I think the most important thing was that he lived what he wanted others to learn. He did everything himself. He never asked anybody to do anything that he didn't first do himself there. And that made a very big difference. It's one thing when we as parents tell our children to do something and the children see us doing something else altogether. So we have to live what we want them to learn there. And I think that was how he taught me, through his own examples.
We have a call on the line from Spain. Joe, I'm glad you could join us. What's your question, please?
It's more of a suggestion than a question. I'm fully in agreement with Mr. Gandhi. I was in Israel on a kibbutz for 2 years in '51, and I just went to Palestine and spent a month there talking to people in both Hamas and the other group, and. Here's the thing. I think the first thing we all have to realize is that if we're going to find a solution in Israel, it's going to require NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and NGPs to do it, because the governments who have been involved absolutely won't. The other thing is that I think we need to understand that there is a direct connection between the Iraqi situation and the Palestinian situation. The United States has relied on Israel as a club over the Middle East. If they can permanently establish a presence in Iraq, then there's a better chance that the Israelis, recognizing what happened to the South Vietnamese, will negotiate in seriousness. However, America's position is so tenuous now that they may continue to need Israel in order to keep control of the Middle East.
Well, Joe? Joe, I was going to say, let's get from Mr. Gandhi his perspective on this then. I mean, one of the key points you've made, Joe, which is very interesting and I want to put to Mr. Gandhi, is this idea that governments perhaps might have shed their responsibility.
Yeah, certainly. I think, everybody has become very selfish, self-centered and greedy for power or for money. And the government is also the same. I mean, they also get involved in greed and power, you know, they mess up many of the problems. That's why I very often think that many of the world's problems can be better dealt with if we can get rid of the politicians.
Well, you know, sir, we had an email that came in, and I use this in reference to your time, having been born in Durban yourself, your time perhaps having witnessed the apartheid system in South Africa. This email that came in from Ohio, from Basim Daoud, says, is the occupation of Palestine just as bad, if not worse, than the apartheid system that was in South Africa? What parallels do you see, sir?
I see absolute parallels. In fact, when I was there in Palestine and when I saw the wall being built there, I said, this is apartheid at its worst. They've taken the example from South Africa and refined it and modified it and used it there, and you know, this is absolute apartheid in Palestine and Israel.
We have Nairobi on the line. Charlie, what would you like to ask?
Yeah, Mr. Gandhi.
Yes.
I would like to know if you would like to say that religion of the wrong interpretation has caused the violence throughout the Middle East. Many religious beliefs go to violence and they look at it as for God. Do you say that the wrong interpretation of religion is the cause of the violence in the Middle East?
How much is that, Mr. Gandhi? That's an important point. How much is the interpretation and misuse of religion in many cases the root problem, and how do you see this being woven into the whole fabric of trying to find a long-lasting peace?
I think it is very, very important. I think, you know, just as politics is being used to exploit people, religion is also being used to exploit people, and you know, I have read many religious scriptures, but I have not seen anywhere any one of them mentioning that you know, God wants us to kill or God wants us to hate other people. And you know, religion should be about love and understanding and compassion, which is the foundation of all the religions of the world there. But we human beings, in order to exploit each other and to create this culture of violence, we use religion, we use God, and we use politics, and we use economics to oppress and exploit people.
Let's get a call in from Germany. Good to hear from Germany. Kamal, what would you like to ask?
Good evening to you and to your guest. My question is about the violence of the Palestinian people in the countries. They cannot get the medical, they cannot get anything to live in Ramadan too, and all the people and also the Arab nation look just only to look but not to move, to make something like sadaqah in Ramadan.
Kamal, interesting point. Let me put this to Mr. Gandhi about this. One of the issues that, and it's been raised, what Kamal is raising, has been raised by a number of people, that perhaps not enough responsibility is taken within the region, among the leaders within the region, and that often there's an expectation of outside help coming in to try and solve the problems. Do you feel that there is need for an outside intervention when it comes to situations like the Palestinians, Israelis, or could it be something that could be resolved within the region itself?
No, I think it is something that needs to be resolved within the region. It's only when the people themselves realize that enough is enough and they don't want any more of this exploitation and you know, political maneuverings, then they will be able to put an end to it. Outside people can only come and suggest things and go away, and it's ultimately the people there who have to live. You know, it's like the Soviet Union. I mean, we built weapons of mass destruction for so many years and spent so many millions and billions of dollars in doing that to protect ourselves from the Soviet Union. But ultimately the Soviet Union disintegrated when the people got up and said, enough is enough, we don't want it. So in the same way, I think the people of the Middle East and especially the Palestinians, when they wake up and say enough is enough and we want to put an end to this, it will end overnight.
Let me ask you about the work of the foundation, the institute you've set up, the Gandhi Institute for Nonviolence, and how you're able to apply some of those principles of your grandfather and what you are now obviously promoting to people in America, into the US. How is it received here?
It's received very well. It is basically a teaching institute. It's not an activist institute. I've been teaching this at the universities all over the country and in fact also abroad. It's been received wonderfully by the young people, and that's what really gives me tremendous hope in this country, that the young people are really interested in an alternative to violence. And they have accepted what I tell them and this philosophy with an open heart. And I've gone and planted these seeds in their minds, and now I'm hoping that eventually they will all germinate and we will have a more peaceful United States.
Well, Mr. Arun Gandhi, thank you very much. I wish you luck with your work and your project. Thank you very much for joining us on this week, and thank you.
Thank you for having me on your show. It was a pleasure.
You, well, thank you, our viewers, for being with us. On the next show, that'll be on Monday, we'll discuss the controversy behind an Arabic language public school in New York, which opponents describe as a madrasa that will produce homegrown terrorists. If you have any thoughts about that or thoughts about pressing issues around the world you'd like us to cover, then send an email to riz@aljazeera.net. We'll see you next time. Street Talk is next.